Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Well, in the news tonight, we're going to talk about the Shanghai lockdown. Many people are upset about that. We have one religious leader who is actually supporting the war in Ukraine.
Interesting.
And in Texas and other parts of the country here, we're experiencing a drought. We'll have those details and how it's affecting both the ranchers and the animals that they run on those ranches. But first, we're going to talk about the oil companies and what's the latest taking place there. Now, the United States President Joe Biden recently blamed oil companies for the major gas price increases, noting that they have been recording their largest profits in years. Now, President Biden said they have a choice. One, they can put those profits to productive use by producing more oil, or two, they can, as some of them are doing, exploit the situation, sit back, ship those profits to investors while American families struggle to make ends meet.
Boy. Well, executives from 6 major oil companies, including Chevron, BP, ExxonMobil, and Shell, will be testifying before Congress concerning the record high gas prices later this week. John Catsimatidis, the chairman and CEO of United Refining Company, also the CEO of the Manhattan grocery store chain, Gristetti's Food, as well as the CEO of Red Apple Group, was interviewed on Fox News Mornings with Maria.
Well, when asked for his reaction to what the president said, well, the billionaire responded, "It's part of the big lie. The White House has not been telling the truth to the American people, and it's like saying if the price of Bank America stock is $100, they're responsible for high interest rates. Well, the markets are the markets. The markets are trading oil, and the oil companies, whether they're producing it or refining it, they're the ones that are just going along with the markets."
He also pointed out how when Biden entered the presidency, oil was at $50 a barrel, and now it's up to $100. Even though the president has released oil from U.S. reserves twice, the prices only went down temporarily and then shot back up. But drilling for oil in North America isn't preferred by the president. But as he also explained, Alaska has 100 years worth of oil, over 100 billion barrels, and Canada has 180 billion barrels. And that, he said, does not count the Arctic Ocean off the coast of Canada and Alaska, which there's even greater reserves there.
Wow. Well, he continued further saying, it's infinite because the earth makes oil. It isn't like the old days. People said, oh, it's from dead dinosaurs. It's not from dead dinosaurs. The earth produces oil, he said. And that's a pretty interesting statement because not many people are saying that very thing right there.
No, and the Saudis have known that for years because they'll use a well until it gets low. They'll cap it. They'll use other wells. They'll come back to that one later, and it's right at the top again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, but since the oil, gas, and diesel prices are so high right now, food prices has risen as well. Now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because of increased transportation costs, food prices have gone up 7.9% from February of 2021. Now, according to Catsimatidis, food prices will continue to rise over the next 1 to 3 months, and he believes that we could see another 10% jump in the food prices over the next 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, that's making it harder for people who are already struggling to put food on the table.
Right.
Now shifting our focus from oil and gas to extreme drought problems. Well, Utah is expecting a difficult summer because of the drought that has been plaguing that state. Among the concerns are widespread wildfire that could have catastrophic results. Now, to get an idea of the situation, you can compare pictures of the Jordanelle Reservoir from 2019 and today. Just 3 years, but the drop, of course, in the water levels is drastic in that short period of time. While soil moisture has increased this year, which translates into more snow and rain getting back into the reservoir. So even though that's more water, the levels are still very low.
But reservoirs have been used heavily, and it is almost certain there will be statewide restrictions imposed. Now, in the Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District, officials there are asking people to cut back on indoor water usage. Now, Utah's Division of Water Resources is urging everyone to take immediate action.
Ranchers in California are also experiencing rising costs in raising cattle as a heat wave sets in and the drought continues. Ranchers have no choice but to raise the price for their herds, which in turn raises the cost of milk and meat at your local grocery stores. These costs have not been seen yet in local markets, but should be expected.
So here's how it works. Now, the grass that Californian cattle usually grow fat on is drying up from a lack of rain, and the grass is dying. Now, one rancher, Justin Fields, told NBC Bay Area News, "We have to budget grass for the entire year. So by selling these calves now, 2 months early, that's half the months to feed for the next couple months."
Well, when budgeting grass, ranchers need to know how much rain to expect. Average rainfall in San Jose Hills is about 20 inches. However, this year they have only received 13 inches, and the higher temperatures are eating up what moisture is left. Mr. Fields said, quote, "Moving forward, we may have to buy supplemental feed," end quote. But the cost of feed and hay will also go up because there is less rainfall to grow those as well.
Well, the USDA has said due to a combination of all of these factors, the prices for wholesale beef is likely to go up 4 to 7% in 2022. Now, dairy products will increase in cost as well, rising 4 to 5%, but the consumers aren't the only ones being hit hard because of the drought conditions. Some ranchers are selling off their entire herds. Now, that in turn is affecting the land where cattle are grazed, much of which is public and conservation lands.
Well, another state facing drought condition is Texas. Most of the state is at some level drought not seen since 2011, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. There were very low precipitation levels during the winter months, but March was even drier, spreading the drought further. There have been water shortages as well as an increased risk of wildfires.
Well, several of these wildfires have burned tens of thousands of acres, including the Eastland Complex, which was made up of 7 separate wildfires spread over several counties that killed 1 person, destroyed dozens of homes, and burned nearly 55,000 acres of land. Now, after 2 weeks, the fire was 90% contained and has now since been completely extinguished, but the dry conditions and the high winds have caused there to be many more red flag warnings across the state.
May and June are the rainiest months in the Lone Star State, and many Texans are hoping for some relief. Predictions, of course, aren't so promising. Governor Greg Abbott has already declared the drought a national disaster threatening public health. And of course, agricultural crops will be affected by severe drought conditions as well.
Yeah. So I can see those ranchers are really hoping that these next couple months they're going to get the rain, not just for the cattle that they need, but really the whole state to combat these wildfires and so forth.
That's right.
Well, we're now going to turn to our field correspondent, Larry McGee, who has been covering several stories for us, including those Shanghai lockdowns that we talked about. But first, he's going to talk about a new COVID variant. We've talked about several of them, but once again, we have a new one. Larry, what's the latest on this new COVID variant?
Though it has almost become an apathetic non-factor in the minds of many individuals, the coronavirus is still alive and active, and there are 2 new subvariants reportedly coming out of China and the UK, which are making headlines. The Omicron offshoot is being referred to as XE by authorities, but it is not at the moment being labeled as a variant of concern. Officials say the virus is constantly mutating. Nurses are under constant stress as they strive to administer care to those who are infected with the plague and unfit. The nurses themselves are reporting PTSD among their colleagues, accompanied by increased tendencies towards suicide. One of the biggest grievances seems to be a sense of failure at being able to maintain their desired level of care for their overwhelming caseloads. There are reports of shortages of nurses now related to it all, but certain metrics indicate that there are at least 1 million trained nurses in the U.S., for example, who are just not currently working in hospitals. Analysts surmise that this is due in large part to a lack of feeling safe and valued in their occupation. Shanghai is locking down its occupants in response to the virus while Canada enters its sixth surge. The country is said to be experiencing a slight uptick in hospitalizations related to the BA.2 subvariant. For now, Canadian officials are recommending masking, booster shots, and staying home when sick. As Title 42 ends, the U.S. is bracing for an influx of immigrants seeking to make America their home. Some are already arriving from areas such as Tijuana, where poor farmers are said to be targets for extortioners, and there have also been some arrivals from Ukraine. Ending the measure is receiving some political opposition. While applying for asylum in the U.S. is said to be a right, Title 42 had prevented many from being processed at America's various ports, and it is also thought to have contributed significantly to illegal immigration. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan Jeff, back to you.
Yeah, well, definitely we can see that many of the citizens in Shanghai have basically reached their breaking point being in this lockdown for so long. Many different places in China going through this phase with China's zero tolerance policy on COVID-19.
And Larry's last article there with the borders opening up, that's actually going to be fairly interesting since they've been closed for so long. It'll see, what type of travel now people are going to take since that basically that lockdown has been released.
That's right.
Well, as the war rages on in Ukraine, many Orthodox leaders condemn the attacks by Russia, with even the Vatican making a statement that it is willing to facilitate talks to end the conflict.
But one religious leader is not so quick to condemn Russia's actions, but is backing them. Russia's Patriarch Krill is one such leader. Orthodox Patriarch Kirill's loyalty lies with Russia, even speaking of Russia's opponents as evil forces.
Well, he also referred to Ukraine as a nation that has succumbed to sinful Western practices, such as gay pride parades. Now, in Ukraine, some of the 30 million members are split between a self-governing church and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church that is part of the Moscow Patriarchy.
Well, since the invasion, rival religious leaders in Ukraine have been unified in its condemnation of the Russian invasion. Many clerics are calling for a complete split from the Moscow Church. But meanwhile, Ukraine's 4.5 million Catholics are looking to the Pope for answers for peace. So far, the Pope has not appealed to Krill for peace, nor has he named Vladimir Putin as the aggressor. Well, Martin Gack, a religious affairs analyst with DW News, spoke on a recent episode of DW News regarding religion, war, and Putin.
Well, Gack said that religion plays an important role in war, using the church to make decisions to make war and the position of the church to rally the citizens forward. For the Russians, the Ukrainian church is very important to Moscow.
He also said that there's a messianic message that's not very clear coming from the politicians or if you watch the news, but it's certainly there when you hear people talking about it in the different parishes and the churches. Well, the Ukrainian church is like Jerusalem is to Israel for many in Russia and also within that Russian Orthodoxy.
Well, Australia is looking to upgrade and modernize its weapon capabilities with hypersonic missiles, which is being done to help create peace in the Indo-Pacific region. There's one of those, hey, if we get more missiles, certainly we'll have peace type ideas. Well, the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said in a press conference recently, "We do these things to keep Australians safe. We do these things to bring balance and strategic certainty to our region, and that's why we work with so many partners in our region."
We engage, he continued, in this as an effort to bring peace and stability, not the alternative. The reason that we invest in these things, referring to the weapons, is to create a peaceful and stable environment and not for war.
Well, North Korean leader's sister warned Seoul that it would be willing to use nuclear weapons if provoked. Now, this message comes after South Korea's defense minister highlighted South Korea's preemptive strike capabilities on Friday, saying that it had the capability to hit any target in North Korea if there are signs of a missile launch.
North Korean sister Kim Yo-jong called the South's defense minister's comments a fantastic daydream of hysteria of a lunatic. Well, she also said that North Korean nuclear weapons are to act as a deterrent, but will be used in the event of an attack from the South. Both Koreas are showing displays of missile tests and have been in recent months.
Well, the North's comments are likely aimed at South Korea's president-elect, who took a tougher stance against Pyongyang than his predecessor. Now, Jong's spokesperson said that preemptive strikes are a globally accepted action, especially when a threat persists. Now, aggressive statements reveal that there might be a shift in the two states' relations when the new president takes office in Seoul.
Li Yusheng, China's vice foreign minister, is blaming NATO for the war in Ukraine, calling it a Cold War vestige. China's foreign minister, Wang Yi, said that China is on the right side of history over the crisis, as time will tell. Well, the China-Russia alliance had a close relationship that was really strong before the war in Ukraine started, even with the recent signing of a joint statement between the two leaders of Russia and China, which we also reported on. But after the start of the conflict or the war between Russia and Ukraine, China became ambiguous regarding the two's relationship.
But after a recent phone call between China's president and the U.S. president regarding China's support for Russia and China's statement, which said China is on the right side of the war, many think that China is going to go all in with Russia because Beijing believes that Russia is going to win the war.
Well, lastly, the UN General Assembly has voted to suspend Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. 93 countries backed the suspension, 24 opposed, and 58 countries abstained. Russia is the second country to be removed from the Human Rights Council after Libya had its membership stripped in 2011. So we do see a lot of moves taking place, a lot of opposition against Russia, but Russia's not, kind of being left to dangle out there alone. There's other very large countries like China that seem to be in Russia's corner.
Right, I was going to say, and the difference there, Libya was pretty small. They were easily overtaken, but Russia, and now you have China, who pretty much said they're going to back Russia. It's not going to be like we saw with Libya and some of those smaller countries to where they just kind of got squashed. Russia's not going to go down like that.
No, and when you think about over the last 20, 30 years of conflicts that we've had, everybody right now is talking about nuclear. Everybody is looking at nuclear as an option to kind of come out on top of this continuous, bickering back and forth between nations.
Right, but one thing with nuclear, there's no winners.
Never is.
Well, if you'd like to learn more about these stories, contact the House of Yahweh. When you do, don't forget to request your free copy of the monthly newsletter and Prophetic Word magazine. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them on any of their websites by going to Yahweh.com, IsraelHawkins.com, and Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. You can also email the House of Yahweh at info@yahweh.com. And for all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen. And don't forget to check out the Yisrael Says and the Ask Yisrael programs, which are available online, free to aid you in your studies of the Scriptures. You can find those by going to YisraelSays.com and AskYisrael.com. Well, don't go anywhere, because up next is a very informative sermon by Yisrael Hawkins that is guaranteed to set you in the right direction towards peace. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Hammerman.
Thank you for watching.